Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a frankly mind-bending and highly provocative article by Dr. Melvin Sewell, published in BBBB magazine. We're going to be unpacking some really intense allegations today, stuff like test manipulation, engineered student failure, and these deeply entrenched systemic hierarchies in higher education. It is a fascinating look at the hidden mechanisms that the author claims are operating quietly behind the scenes of our most prestigious academic institutions. Now, to navigate this incredibly dense material, we're going to use a sort of peeling the onion approach. Here's our roadmap. Section 1, the most correct doctrine. Section 2, engineered failure and profit. Section 3, the funding hierarchy. And finally, Section 4, a timeline of controversies. All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the most correct doctrine. Dr. Sewell actually anchors his whole argument in a very relatable, high-stakes setting. Picture this. It's 2015, and you are sitting in a medical school exam room at Ross University. You're presented with this exact biology question. Which enzyme breaks down starch? Now, you look at the options. You know that amylase breaks down starch. But wait, you also know that pylene breaks down starch. Biologically speaking, both answers are completely valid. But on this specific test, only choosing amylase gets you the points. If you pick pylene, you get absolutely nothing. So what is actually going on here? Well, this dynamic creates what the text calls the most correct doctrine. According to Dr. Sewell, we aren't just looking at a poorly written test question. He argues this is a deliberate, calculated testing mechanism. It's a system where multiple correct answers are put in front of you, but credit is only given for the one answer the institution has arbitrarily deemed most correct. The claim here is that this manipulative system is designed to measure a student's obedience to authority rather than their actual grasp of medical knowledge. Moving right along to Section 2, engineered failure and profit. Let's look at how this testing trick builds into a massive institutional strategy. According to the publication, a whopping 30% of the questions on these exams were deliberately structured using this exact most correct format. Just think about what that does to a grading curve. A full third of your test is practically rigged with multiple right answers, forcing you to guess the institution's preference. The text argues that doing this, artificially and intentionally, lowers student scores across the board. And that brings us to a really staggering statistic from the text. 50%, literally half, of incoming students ultimately failed out. That is a massive attrition rate. But Dr. Sewell doesn't look at this as an accident or just the result of a tough curriculum. He argues this was a totally engineered mechanism. The idea is that the school admits these massive classes, collects all their tuition and federal loan money, and then systematically discards half of them, using the exact manipulative testing practices we just talked about. Now, here is where the text significantly escalates. We shift from purely financial motives to ideological ones. The article raises some incredibly disturbing questions about alleged faculty ties to eugenics organizations. Dr. Sewell openly questions whether Ross University was functioning as a normal medical school or if it was acting as a platform for perpetuating racial hierarchies. And the kicker? He claims this was all being sustained by American taxpayer money via federal student aid. It's a deeply provocative assertion that totally reframes the institution's purpose. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the funding hierarchy. Broadening the scope from the Caribbean, the author details his transition into a Ph.D. program at Pepperdine University. He was looking for a fresh start, right? But he claims that while he was there, he encountered a professor who openly opposed interracial relationships. For Dr. Sewell, this was a clear demonstration that these deeply troubling racial ideologies aren't just isolated to certain schools. They persist and are even protected right inside highly prestigious mainstream academic environments. Check out the stark contrast he paints on this next slide. On one side of the funding equation, you have established universities. The author points out that these institutions easily maintain steady federal funding, even when, as he alleges, their own faculty promote discriminatory ideologies. But on the other side, you have independent innovators. The text highlights that independent creators face constant rejection from government contracts and National Science Foundation grants. He specifically mentions his own invention, the VT biosensor, being denied access regardless of its actual merit. He argues this proves the funding system inherently favors institutional conformity over true independent innovation. Okay, let's head into our final part, Section 4, a timeline of controversies. To give us some historical scaffolding for these massive systemic allegations, the article lays out a 10-year timeline tied to Ross University and its parent company Adtalem. It starts back in 2010 with early reports of overcrowding and delayed clinical placements. Fast forward to 2015, and we see the documentation of that crazy 50% attrition rate. By 2017, this had escalated into full-blown investigations into deceptive practices. And finally, in 2020, students actually began filing borrower defense claims to seek loan forgiveness. The author uses this exact timeline to validate his point that the system wasn't just struggling, it was broken by design. Before we wrap this up, we absolutely have to talk about how the author frames his own work, because it's super unique. The text operates under what Dr. Sewell calls a sovereign diagnostic disclaimer. Basically, he explicitly states that his writings are meant to be read as mythic infrastructure and a cinematic indictment. He views his work as a set of diagnostic tools designed to expose what he calls ritualized containment, the invisible rules institutions use to keep certain people out while protecting themselves. He's very clear that this isn't standard political commentary. It's a sovereign broadcast meant to expose deep systemic rot. Ultimately, Dr. Sewell boils his entire sweeping argument down to this one incredibly powerful closing quote: "Education must measure understanding, not obedience." It brings us right back to that very first biology question about the enzymes, doesn't it? He is demanding a total end to systems where failure is meticulously engineered for profit and where success is tightly, and he argues racially, controlled by gatekeepers. So, as we finish up this explainer, I want to leave you with the ultimate question posed by the text. When you look at how tests are structured, how student attrition is literally monetized, and how federal grants are handed out, who truly gets to define knowledge in modern education? And is our system actually built to reward brilliant, independent innovation, or does it merely fund conformity? It is a fascinating, heavy perspective to keep in mind the next time you look at the world of higher education. Thanks for joining me for this one.